What's up? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
There we go. Wonderful. So you can probably see the topic of the day, and this is gonna be this is gonna be good. So for everyone who is tuning in right now, Megan is essentially my scientific mastermind colleague, my rave friend that we get into shenanigans all the time and adventures. 3, business partner, and 4, kind of like manifester. So we're going to be bouncing ideas back and forth, and this whole mini series is basically just to engage in topics that people don't normally do, or talk about them in a different light from our perspective. Megan, if you have anything to say, you are welcome.
No, I'm just ready to get started.
Okay, so I guess to open this conversation. Oh, also, anyone in the comments, anyone who comments is welcome to ask questions, and we'll address them because that's part of this whole thing. Um, but I guess to open this, we should both share our definition of what willpower is. Megan, you can go first because ladies first.
So so by the way, if you're watching, this got me off guard. Drew doesn't tell me the topic until it's time, so I had no time to prepare for this. But my definition of willpower is going to be a singular focus that nobody can interrupt. When it comes down to it, the reason that we stray from our definiteness of purpose or ultimate purpose, if you will, is from distractions and influences of other people, really. Someone saying, you can't do that, that's too difficult, etc., etc. Or you overcome, or when a challenge approaches you and you can't overcome it. The only thing that is going to get you through that is willpower. So I see willpower as a force that can't be interrupted. Um, Criticism, etc., etc. It is just going to continue to push you forward over obstacles and through walls.
Okay, I like that, and I share a similar view, but I guess I'll put it in my own words. Um, Willpower to me is the decision between here you have possibility and here you have reality. You make the decision to cross this very fine line from possibility into reality, and it just takes the effort from the individual to create this that we have. And this can be perceived in many different ways. If it's a science endeavor, you got to put in the work and research, and then it becomes a reality because it starts in the mind, and you find ways to get to your goal. If it starts with exercise, you can't deadlift 500 pounds right off the bat. You have to train that, and it takes willpower, and it takes endurance through the pain and conditioning to create that experience. So I think that's my definition, and those are the examples I would use. What do you think about people saying you have no willpower, you have no control over this moment, it's all predetermined? What do you think about that?
Um, Let me think about that. So you're saying that another person were to come to me and say, Megan, you're wrong. The power of your will has nothing to do with anything. Your circumstances are going to happen regardless.
So let's say it's meant to be, meaning this was always going to happen regardless of what happened.
I would say that I, in the end, am the one who constructs my reality. So yes, I agree that everyone's life has definite points, definite chapters, things that happen no matter what. But my way of getting there and ensuring that I get there and being in continuous control is going to be my own thought, my own willpower. Um,
Can you see my screen? It just went blank.
it did go a little blurry, it did.
Uh,
But
the heck?
this kind of leads us into like a very deep topic. And it's going to be the ability of one to manifest their own life step by step in changing course of their life. So
Okay.
let me think about this, how I want to phrase this.
Sam, yes. It must
Yes.
be asked. It must be asked.
Yes. So, okay, so everyone's life has a lot of different possibilities,
Yes.
and I think that you can definitely shift those possibilities because I'd like to bring up the example of hypnotic rhythm. So, hypnotic rhythm is a pole of, if I'm stuck in a very negative environment, a very impoverished environment, it's very to break out of that. And as long as I remain in that environment, my ultimate reality essentially is constructed by me
So like
or
nature, like
for
environment
me.
versus the self. The
Yes.
soul, like if I'm in a shitty situation, it will influence me whether I want it to or not.
Yes. So I think that environment has a very huge thing. So when you're in such a constructive environment or constructed environment, it kind of decides for you. And willpower, I think, is that power out of that environment into a new one. So I think that it is ultimately the environment and circumstances that are going to shape the reality. But I do have control over which environment I choose. So they're kind of like predetermined paths. And depending on which one you go on, then your life is kind of constructed for you. And willpower is going to be making that conscious to change it. So when somebody's telling me, oh, this is going to happen no matter what, da 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 da, yes, it is going to happen as long as I am on this path. But if I take a massive quantum leap in my own mind to go on a different path, to go on a different cognitive reality, then I can indeed shift it. Does
What
that
do you
make sense?
what do you mean by quantum leap?
So quantum leaping, so I'm kind of seeing it as different timelines. That's one way we can do it. Like on this timeline, there's this the reality, this on this one. And as long as I stay on this one, these ones don't exist.
Right.
So that quantum leap going to one of those other realities, hopefully the higher vibrating reality. And that's what I see as the quantum leap of the mind.
Is it like a mental plan? Like you have different paths you can go, and you just it doesn't. Quantum is a physical term. Like in physics, like
Mm-hmm.
particles act a certain way, and they act very, very erratically sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
very unpredictable. How does quantum come into like these mind shifts? Because as the way I see it is like you have different schematics of how you want your life to go, and if you make this decision, this happens. If you make this one,
Mm-hmm.
this happens. Put the effort in, this occurs. But like a quantum leap, it doesn't exactly make sense in this context because like if I'll speak epigenetically. Do you know what epigenetics is?
Yes, I
And for the people
do.
here that don't, I was just wondering. I'm like speaking to you and the crowd because like epigenetics is how your genes, which like my phenotype looks like this due to my DNA, and my genetic, like how I am comprised of, is made by proteins coded by my DNA. But your environment influences your genes. And say you eat really bad food and you don't work out or you don't meditate or you don't like you just do not create an environment that is what other people have. Like someone works very hard and they keep their house clean and they're organized. Their genetic expression is different, like literally different, because the proteins that create the ability for you to enact those actions are produced when you enact something of that sort. Like if you work out, you need to create the proteins to build up your muscle, help your lungs have better capacity and things of that nature. So in like quantum leaps, it sounds like epigenetics because you're changing your environment and that in turn changes you because you changed yourself to change your environment. It's like a dualistic perspective.
Yeah. So I like how you brought up that the quantum, all the particles, they're very erratic, and that's kind of how I see a leap versus just like a normal like shift in lifestyle. Like shifting your environment ever so much. Yeah, it might make it like turn out a little bit different, but then I still kind of see as like the same kind of ideal of things. You shift your environment, you shift your home. It could be a little bit better, but you're not drastically changing it.
Right.
I drastic change that. Something I that me just packing up my bags and moving to London would be like a little bit, me just cleaning my house. Something that is so kind of around
Yeah.
has like no choice but to just choose a different reality than that and I stayed here.
It's like uprooting yourself. It's like you're a plant and you move from Florida to Florida and London aren't the same, but you like move yourself to a different environment, and you're going to have to change because if I mean you don't have to change, but you're going to have to adapt to function in this new system, and that in turn changes the system and you. So what do you? I know you study things like astrology and things of that nature. How does free will go into that? Because if you're born a certain way, from my understanding, if you're born a certain way, you contain these characteristics that supposedly define you. And that sounds like you don't have free will if all these things are predetermined at your birth due to some like planetary alignment and gravitational pull and whatever other factors influence you.
So this is actually a huge topic in astrology, is the difference between your natal chart and your free will. So I like to think of your natal chart as giving you certain qualities as to why you may do something. Like it is written in my natal chart, clear as day, that I should be but it's also written in my natal chart that my firstborn child is going to be a girl. Things like that. So it contains a couple major life events, that are inevitable, or not inevitable, because if I decide then I'll never have that firstborn as a girl, So the astrology is kind of like, it is a map of your life, but there's a ton of different ways to get there. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does,
Okay.
but this confuses me because if it says you're supposed to be a scientist and you've chosen that route because it said so, are you making the decision or are you following something that says you did? Because you could give up everything and become like a rock star or a DJ or an artist. I mean, you're already an artist, but like, you know what I'm saying? You could ditch all of this and do something else.
I could. But if I were to ditch all of that and do something else, I almost guarantee that there would be something in my natal chart that an astrologer could interpret as to, this girl at some point in her life, she could just switch it up. You know what I mean? So all those little details, all those little quirks, something as drastic as me being one to just drop everything and do something else, that could be found in the chart.
Because I kind of like, I respect the zodiacs and I respect astrology and I respect like the Chinese calendar and things like that. But to say that it defines you and then even if you don't think it defines you, to find value in like these horoscopes and say like my day is supposed to be like this because this said that, like it,
Yeah.
do you know what the Barnum effect is?
The what?
The Barnum effect.
No.
So the Barnum effect is a psychology term, and it's when you are given something vague enough that can apply to anyone, you will think that it's special to you, and it's like almost like suggestibility. So like t- daily affirmations, which aren't bad by
Yeah.
no means, a good way to set your mental tone. But for
Yeah.
people to say the affirmation caused them to have this experience, like you are going to meet the love of your life today, and you've been going through hardship, and you deserve this. Like if you think that this is dictating your life, wouldn't you feel powerless?
So that is what we call. So the Barnum effect goes hand in hand with the cold reading. Something that it can apply to anyone. For anyone who's watching this, a lot of red flags that I search for when I'm looking in horoscopes is if they're suggesting things like maybe, possibly, happen, it could not happen. I was listening to a really bad YouTuber one time. He was like, well, if you have an Aquarius rising and you have siblings, you either have a very good relationship with them or a very bad relationship. Duh, you know?
Yeah.
So so that was just a Barnum effect. But as far as the day-to-day basis, personally, the way that I read astrology is you really don't do it on a day-to-day basis. That would be having to calculate something down to like the very star in the sky. In the sky, and we know that there's more stars in the sky than there is grains of sands on the beach.
Right.
What for is kind of on a year-to-year basis. Because it's an entire clock, a 12-month clock. You know what I mean? That the precision, on a day-to-day basis is very unlikely, but it is a little bit easier to do it in gaps, kind of see what my childhood was by some of the earlier houses and the earlier signs, such as Aries. And then, as I get older and I develop, then we can start looking at Pluto and things like that. that it really is kind of a generational clock, and it's supposed to represent one's entire life. You know, I don't know how many days I would live. Quick math, 3 years old, you're already at like 1,000 different days, you know? So what do you live to be like 90,000 days, you know? And to fit that all into one chart would be very unlikely. But if we're to split it up into, say, decades, you know, highlight points of one's life, and especially when the person, the love of your life, you can see that, but not really. Astrology is one of those things that works very well in hindsight. And some,
That's what I've noticed too, because people will ask me like, "What's your sign?"
yeah,
And the moment that I tell them what I am,
mm,
will form this picture. It's like,
mm-hmm.
oh, it makes so much sense. You totally seem like that. And it's like, no, you don't even know me. You have
Yeah,
no idea who I am. And that's why I don't tell people what my I usually don't tell people my birthday because like they figure it out for themselves. Like it's the day I was okay. But like the moment they want to label you and classify you, that like takes away,
yeah,
it takes away your free will, but it takes away their free will to see you as you are. And to like go back, like to full back from the astrology to willpower, like where does this line, like where does it blur? Because I know that you have conflict. I just know you, and you've had like problems with astrology because there's a lot of math involved and a lot of angles, and like the smallest like thousandth of a degree can cause a giant shift.
yeah.
And how does how about how would you explain something that is supposed to like be determined on like a physiological level, like
So,
because how we that's how we are dictated, you know?
so to cover a couple of those topics, you know, the unfortunate reality of astrology is it has kind of become a fad, where people will hear your sun sign. Drew's a Taurus, y'all, if y'all didn't know. And,
They already got it. Come, I gotta end this now.
and it would just be wrong of someone, especially not an astrologer, assuming that they know everything of what he is because he's a Taurus. So the Taurus only constitute the sun sign, you know, kind of the ego, but the entire natal chart constructs the entire
Fernando, stop.
the entire ego.
Oh my,
Um, so not only so Drew won't give me his birth time, so I don't really know, but
I don't know it. I don't know it.
uh,
Okay.
so his but then to see how it is that Drew communicates, then we would want to see his Mercury, you know, how he deals in matters of conflict. Let's look at his Mars, you know, how did he do in past lives? Let's look at his Saturn. And then from there, does he have any harsh aspects of his personality, which would be in the different conjunctions, square, sextile, and that is where the angles come in,
But
you
this
know.
is personifying things externally because we know that like your attraction and your desire and your memory are determined by different neurotransmitters and hormones. So like the reason I would be attracted to even engage with you is because I have oxytocin, serotonin, and like dopamine in my system, and then I have acetylcholine moving my mouth muscles and engaging my brain to form memories and things of that nature. Like, how can you explain that? Because there's multiple arguments on things of that
So
like
are we still talking astrology with that, or just
I was trying to say, how does astrology influence things like that?
okay?
Because I
So
know serotonin makes me feel satisfied. It helps me. It helps you downregulate areas of the brain that think it knows things. It lets you observe. It doesn't make you say this is that. It's like I don't know what that is. It just is.
okay, so I'm actually going to grab this notebook. I have a notebook that actually has a bit of an answer in it. So, different signs, planets, different minerals. And the different signs are going to have different concentrations of different minerals in them as well. So let's look. So, for example, if you're Leo, the biochemical salts in your body, you're going to have a slightly higher concentration of magnesium phosphorium as compared to, you know, a who has a bunch of calcium sulfate. Does that make any sense or help at all?
Is there like science backing this, or is this just a book that's written?
No, this came from a peer review
Okay.
by, if anyone wants to know, it was Dr. G.W. Carey, and he or she found a relation between 12 mineral elements and the 12 zodiac signs. So I think that would be kind of a hint in the proper direction as to what you're thinking as far as our neurochemical makeup.
Yeah, but wouldn't that take away the power from you then, if an external force is causing you to act a certain way?
So this would kind of go into the power of the, you know, that is kind of we could call it, I don't even know if that would go into the mind body connection, but how power does your mind have? Is the mind the ultimate creator, or is the mind created within an environment?
Right. I see that you can go with the flow and you can let your stream of conscious engage with the environment, and that would be an exertion of willpower, of almost like not complacency but like patience. Like you don't have the reins and you let go.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can use the mind to be engaged in the environment and dictate what occurs out here, because sometimes you don't want to know what's going to happen. Like if you went to a movie and you knew exactly what was going to happen, why are you going to watch it? Why?
Yeah.
So like
Hmm.
when I see things like have when people say that you don't have willpower, like it doesn't exist, that makes me question, like, why would someone say that? Because it's pretty depressing. Like everything's already determined, everything's going to happen, you have no control over what's going to happen. And on the other side, if you have all the willpower, you create exactly what's going to happen, and it's almost the same thing, and you get anxious when things don't occur.
So, brother, you need to read Outwitting the Devil of Napoleon Hill, because that is exactly that. You can be a non-drifter, where you're determining your entire reality, or you can be a drifter, where you get caught in the habit of quote unquote going slow. That's that hypnotic rhythm. You
Hmm.
know, you really can create everything in your reality, but well, okay, let me phrase this differently. You can't create everything in your reality, but you can create the main themes, if that makes sense. So if I had this definite willpower that I am going to be a scientist. I am going to live in the UK and I'm to work with metaphysical cognition.
Right.
Yes, that will happen. That I am determining that. That is the circumstance I want in my life. It will happen, but how? I don't know. You know, we don't have the power. We don't have, because there's so many things going on at once from your house. Just all the objects in my house, they just come to me, those kind of things that I cannot control. My chairs are black and I'm going to live on this street, da 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 da. But in a way, I am moving towards that definite purpose, So kind of with the willpower, as long as, like I said earlier, you are concentrated on that one thing, it'll come to you in the way that you are predicting your reality. But you can't predict everything, like knowing what's going to happen in a movie, because the universe is going to hand you different things that just work. That's where the infinite intelligence comes, and it will always be stronger than us. I can be like, I want this thing, and I think I got it. I know that I can get it, but knowing how to perfectly construct or knit this beautiful picture, that is up to the universe.
Hmm.
Sense?
That's a very good way to put it, and it kind of reminds me of like when you meditate, you can you're exerting willpower to not engage. Does that make sense? Like you are literally forcing yourself to not attach to all these thoughts, just observe. And that's like people think that you do nothing. It's like I'm not doing nothing. If it was that easy, like I would do it all the time.
Yeah.
But you have to consciously be aware of what your brain is doing all the time,
Yes.
and realize that because it's doing this all the time, you can get in the driver's seat and you can, yes, what Alien Babe said, you can detach. You can detach and form new connections spontaneously without your knowledge during that time. And it's forming new associations that I guess create the life you want to live. Not even, maybe not even life that you were meant to live, because it's the ability to reprogram yourself.
Yeah, so that we're always manifesting all the time, whether or not we're aware of what we're creating. It was actually Jay who said it, who who really impacted me by this, and he said every accident is never an accident. You know, even if you have a car accident, you in a way manifested that because you were not in conscious control of your thoughts. In conscious control, meaning you're aware, you know, you're always in control, but to take each thought and hand select it and put it out like you do in meditation, a lot of people don't do that, and they're just caught in this hypnotic rhythm of, say, negativity, and then all these negative things start happening to them, and they're like, why is this happening?
Mm-hmm.
Control your thoughts, you know, because your feelings create your thoughts, thoughts create gravity, gravity creates light, light creates reality. You know that you kind of have to go to that source first, and if you're
Right.
just going and you have no power, then reality is just going to be manifesting, you know, what you think is out of your control. But really, it's because you just didn't have control of your own thoughts.
Right.
And what's so good about meditation is it just kind of gives you a second to sit back, think about it, think about what you want, think about what you're thinking about. Because when you just let the brain go loose, you know, like a wild dog without a leash.
It has a killer instinct to make what it wants a reality, and it does not care what the outcome is.
Yes.
And I think that's a good place to end off. Like, that was a very good response. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Megan, you did wonderfully on this impromptu stream of consciousness, just conversation. And this is a little thing that we started last week, and we have 3 more sessions. It'll be Mondays at 8:30, and we're doing this little switch off each time. So this was the first of the official like 4, and we'll have 3 more. Megan will be hosting the next one, and it will just be another impromptu. She chooses a topic, and we just get right into it. Thank you for tuning in, and good night. I
Good
love
night.
you. I love you. Love you.
I'll
Especially
see
love you.
me.
Yes. Of course, you're the one that was contributing.
Yes. All right. All right. I'll see you later. And
Right.
save. I'll put it on YouTube.
Have a great night. I really appreciate all of you.